Okay. Um, Good evening. I'm Mike C, and welcome to St. Francis Community Listening. I will be your Zoom host tonight. And as part of our strategic planning at St. Francis, we would like to reach out to the community and provide everyone the opportunity to join this conversation, understanding the concerns we're seeing and talk about our hopes for the future. We'll start with a panel discussion, and later we will then open it up for Q&A. For those who may not be familiar with St. Francis Lutheran Church, we are the church on Church Street, just north of Market. The church has been around for over 100 years and has a very colorful past, being very actively involved in the community. We border the neighborhoods of Eureka Valley, Hayes Valley, and the Dubois Triangle. On our panel tonight, we have three guests that will be joining us. Alex Lemberg, Jennifer Laska, and Frank Dizedius. Welcome, Alex. Alex is the president of the Eureka Valley Neighborhood Association. Alex Lemberg is a queer, non-binary Jewish Bay Area native and community public interest attorney and progressive activist. Alex lives with their husband, Kevin Curtin, and dog Pumpkin on Caselli Avenue in Eureka. Alex was elected to the board of the Eureka Valley Neighborhood Association in 2017 and has served as president of the EVNA since January of 2020. Alex is proud to have spearheaded an effort to renovate the Eureka Valley dog play area and to have provided the Castro community with the opportunities to connect with city government and services despite the ongoing pandemic. Professionally, Alex has worked as an associate with Wren Public Law Group and as a senior housing attorney with award-winning nonprofit Open Door Legal, representing hundreds of low-income families in the Bayview, Visitation Valley, Excelsior, and Western Addition neighborhoods of San Francisco in a wide variety of housing-related matters. In July 2021, Alex started a solo general law practice in the Castro with focuses on estate planning, housing, and small businesses and nonprofit development. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Please welcome Jennifer. Jennifer is the president of the Hayes Valley Neighborhood Association. Jen and her husband moved to San Francisco 6 years ago. They immediately felt like they found home in Hayes Valley and got involved with neighborhood organization. Jen has served on the board of HVNA for 3 years and as president of HVNA for the last year, working to navigate the neighborhood and merchant corridor through challenges of the pandemic. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And please welcome Frank. Frank is a director at the Dubois Triangle Neighborhood Association. Frank grew up just outside of Detroit, where he was the product of a community that not only believed that it takes a village, they practiced it. He learned at a very early age that we all have a responsibility for safety, success, and well-being of another and collectively. As a young adult, he joined the Peace Corps to help bridge that gap of cultural understanding and worked as a community development director, helping organize community leaders, neighbors, and friends to get things done together. He has lived in Dubois Triangle and been actively engaged for nearly 20 years in the Dubois Triangle. As a member and now a director with the DTNA, he also works to create and expand our neighborhood community safety program and manage several environmental initiatives, as well as coordinating the Noe Beaver Community Garden. Welcome, Frank.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
For our panel discussion, I would like to request that everyone remain on mute. When the panel discussion is complete, please post your questions to the chat channel, and then we will present those questions to the panelists. Now I'd like to introduce to you our chairperson for tonight from St. Francis. Please welcome Tom Braham.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mike. I'm really happy to be part of this. I'm really happy that we're doing this. And yeah, so I'll be moderating some of the questions before we get to the Q&A. So Alex, I'll start with you. So our first question, so from your vantage point, what are the major changes that you've seen in the community in the past 5 years? And in your role, what are the most difficult issues that you currently face? So kind of a complex first question.
It is a complex first question, but that's okay. All the best discussions come from the toughest questions. So
Right.
I mean, obviously, this isn't a surprise to anyone here. Everything's changed in the last 5 years. It's, the pandemic caught us all off guard. It's changed the entire way we live our lives. And the community was already changing before the pandemic started, of course, and not just Eureka Valley, but San Francisco as a whole and the Bay Area as a whole. We've been going through, demographic shifts, and we've been going through, economic shifts, and, kind of all of these macro ideas that change the course of local history, shall we say. As far as Eureka Valley specifically, my timeline isn't so good in my head. I've lived in the Castro longer than 5 years for sure, but businesses, of course, are one of the most hard hit in the last 2 years, certainly, and and I think a lot of businesses were struggling before that. So we've had a huge amount of business turnover. Again, you all know this already, as far as I think the overall tenor of how San Francisco is going is changing a little bit. I think we're starting to see the return of more low-income people and more people in the arts, and things that were kind of being pushed out in the years previous. But I think the pandemic has kind of created an opportunity for a lot of people who had either been pushed out previously or who were excluded completely from San Francisco to allow them to move back in. And to start rebuilding their communities in other ways. And as far as the most difficult issues I think our community is facing, I think economic recovery is a huge one. I am someone who never refers to homelessness as a problem. We have a housing affordability crisis, most certainly. We have a complete lack of mental health treatment of options available, and there's a lot of problems that cause and underlie homelessness, but I don't think of homelessness as a problem. I think that the fact that we have so many people living on our streets is a major problem for all of us San Franciscans, and especially those of us who do own homes and who do have the great privilege it takes to often own a home in San Francisco. I think it's a big struggle as to how to best address these issues. I think there's a lot of ideas and very few answers, and people want to see answers to these questions, and we just don't have them to a large extent. And I think that's frustrating for a lot of people. And certainly I think for all of us at the neighborhood association level, it's also frustrating, kind of feeling powerless in a lot of ways, and still trying to contribute the maximum we can in the ways that we're able to. I'll stop there and let my co-panelists go.
Thank you. Yeah, so Jennifer, we'll go to you next. So this same question, major challenges or major changes that you've seen in the community, and what are the most difficult issues that you face in your role?
Sure. I have fewer years in San Francisco than the others, I think. So I'm, probably just looking at
Mhm.
the snapshot of the time that I've spent here.
Sure.
Certainly in Hayes Valley, we've seen a lot of independent retail businesses go under. And I think it's kind of important to take a look at what kind of businesses we're talking about. When we say businesses are turning over quickly, we're seeing a lot more of the kind of clicks to bricks stores, the ones that start on the internet and then come into retail coming in. And they're the
Mhm.
ones who can afford the high retail prices because they've already got a big
Mm.
book of business behind them. I mean, I think it's really making it a lot more difficult for those smaller businesses. We've seen, especially during the pandemic, a lot of the businesses that had been around for 20 years or so in Hayes Valley did finally shut their doors. And it was so heartbreaking to see that.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's a big challenge, is how do we keep the feel of the neighborhood, the community of it, with some of those smaller businesses if we've just got big internet retailers coming in. Certainly, with the pandemic, we saw an explosion of tents at one point in time and open drug use on the streets that we hadn't really seen as much in Hayes Valley before. So that was a huge challenge when all the shelters kind of emptied out and everything became highly visible. And there were a lot of concerns with residents living in the area with the activities going on there. I think nobody felt safe for quite some time.
Mm.
From good perspectives, I'm seeing a lot more interaction with the community. I think the pandemic really did bring a lot of people together, who wanted to take a look at San Francisco and say, this is where I consider home. I want to stay here and stick it out and make this the best place I can. And then I think people who were a little bit more transient with the city took the opportunity to leave and go closer to home to themselves. So it does seem like there's a core community here now after the pandemic that is really willing to roll up their sleeves and dig in and try to make things better. Some of the other problems we face here is certainly an increase in traffic. We've got Oak Street that dumps onto the freeway. So we have a lot of accidents that happen right here. I actually live on Oak Street. I've seen some terrible accidents right at the intersections here. So I think, pedestrian safety are big issues right in this area. And I think some of the changes that I've kind of witnessed in the last year or so is there's been a lot more gun violence. We've had a lot on Haight Street, which is a little bit more in the lower Haight and Haight-Ashbury, but it borders all of us here. And I think that is a huge concern. We've also had more armed robberies in the last year and a half in Hayes Valley at the Merchants. So that was, something that it's very scary when you're talking about weapons like that.
Yeah.
It is nice to see the performing arts coming back and people kind of coming back to life, but I think those were probably the biggest changes that I saw, and really it seems like most of that was pandemic induced.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great, thanks.
Sure.
All right, Frank, your turn.
All right.
Major changes in the community, and what are the most difficult issues that you face?
It's interesting. If you'd asked this question maybe even a year ago, I would have thought about it a little different. No surprise. Like Alex, I don't think homeless is the issue. We have other issues that are on our streets and we've had to deal with, from, like Jennifer mentioned, an increase in crime, a major increase in crime, major increase in outside criminals taking advantage of the situation in the city and being able to kind of slip through the cracks of what's going on with the street situation, the crisis basically we have. But one of my biggest concerns, I think, that I started to initially see is, the collective conscious, the shared belief that we all have this idea to take care of one another, to look out for one another. And I think what I started to see is it started to get dismantled, especially here in the city. The constant onslaught of neighbors and friends and family, businesses and residents just experiencing this crisis, both the pandemic and prior to that, this street crisis. And what I mean by that is we are asking people to literally, when seeing people, literally 5 years ago, this wouldn't have happened, walk by people laying on the street and not ask how they're doing. And it became a situation where there were people dying on the streets, and people became so jaded with this idea that they were going to see this every day, every corner. And I could see it in people's faces. I could see it in the way they interacted with one another, that they just couldn't do it. They couldn't handle it, both emotionally and psychologically. Were they responsible for these people? Were they not? Where there's no action being taken to help these people, there's no facility set up to address the mental health crisis that we have on our streets. And that was a real big concern for the neighborhood association. It was very difficult to get people engaged, to feel connected to the society, to be able to commit to that. And it was unfortunate. There were people that laid on the streets and died, and people did walk by, and they didn't ask how you're doing. I make it a point to do it every time, whether I annoy someone or not. But I do try to make sure that within our organization we do push that. Look out for one another, and it's been one of the things that's been a cornerstone of my involvement in the neighborhood. And I'm starting to see a change in that over the last year. I think the pandemic had something to do with that, because all of a sudden our neighbors and our families were being impacted by the pandemic, and there weren't people that could reach out to them. And so there was this impact that they saw all of a sudden, just like that person on the street that they were walking by, they had family members in the hospital they couldn't talk to. And so I think there was a little change in people's behavior and an interest to get more involved. Not unlike Jennifer in Hayes Valley, we had a major safety concern right on Noe Street. We had about 25 tents sprawl up, and it wasn't the tents that were the concern. It was the crime. It was pretty bad. We had rapes right in daylight, mentally ill people being attacked, major drug dealers coming in to the point where the police were telling neighbors don't go down there. So it was really rough. That got managed, that got taken care of, and we saw the city respond in a way that they should have, exactly what they should have done. And they created the crisis group, and that crisis team that goes out and assists the public safety officers in addressing mental health issues has been a game changer. And I think how people are not only responding to people that have mental health concerns on the street, but also how they're feeling about people that have mental health concerns on the street. And that's actually been really nice. The Black Lives Matter movement, I think, has been a shining light over the last 5 years that has allowed everyone to engage in and get involved in really addressing the inequities in our societies. And it's been really nice. You've seen some changes, and you've seen some unity built around that, and some collective understanding of it is our collective responsibility to address it. So that's been really nice. And as an organization, that's what we keep trying to do. We keep trying to reach out and get more and more people involved. And that's really that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's really our goal in the neighborhood association. So.
Great. All right. Jennifer, we'll start with you this time. So I think you've started to touch on some of this, but what are the primary signs of hope? What are the challenges for the future that you see? How is the community positioned to deal with the issues?
Sure. I think one of the easiest signs of hope to look at is certainly an economic one. We have a lot of the empty spaces now leased up. So there is more of a sense of, I think, safety on the streets because there's more activity. Businesses that we weren't sure if they were going to be able to hold out are still there, and they're doing okay, and have a lot more business now. So I think those are the first signs of hope that things are changing. For us in Hayes Valley, having the performing arts back makes a huge difference. People's mood is better. You see everybody actually starting to enjoy life again, and coming out for events, coming out to dine and meet friends and have a great time. And then we have some groups that have kind of formed to start making Hayes Valley a cleaner place. We have a monthly cleanup group that comes and meets up, and they've worked with the city to get supplies to really try to make the community a better place. So we're seeing a lot more activity like that, where people feel like they can engage with each other again. We did the street closure on Hayes Street as a way of trying to get that economic recovery to happen. And I hear so much from people who say that it really felt like it brought back a sense of community that they didn't really even have pre-pandemic, because there was just suddenly this big open gathering space, and people would come out with their kids in the morning and walk them, up and down the middle of the street. We watched kids learn how to ride bikes on the street, which, could never happen before. Everybody walking their dogs in the area. So it was just really kind of built this sense of community that hadn't really been there before. And a lot of people who'd been in the area for years meeting people who'd just moved in. So it was a good method for that.
Great. Frank, same question for you. Signs of hope, and what are the challenges for the future, and how is the community effectively positioned to deal with the issues?
Like Jennifer mentioned, and I talked in a little bit about that, people are getting more engaged, and we have always had a very engaged neighborhood. Our neighborhood's pretty, I think just the nature of where our neighborhood sits, and there's a lot of foot traffic around one another. So we tend to, as a neighborhood, see each other a little more often. So I think that with the pandemic in general, and having forced us outside, that just helped reinforce that need to get involved. And with, I think, some of the activities that you see, a lot of organizations stepping up and demanding that some of these concerns that they have as neighbors and residents in the city start to be addressed, has started to help people feel a little more comfortable. They are starting to go out to the businesses. They're starting to join together. Our farmers market is really busy. As a matter of fact, it's going on today. There's a lot of activity going on around that. The involvement within other organizations and joining in other organizations to help strengthen some of those activities. You see a lot more of that happening, which is nice. So we're not just doing things alone, and we work with other neighborhood associations as well. Some hope for the future. I'm always hopeful, and things are always going to get better. I think that the economic crisis and COVID hitting at the same time, we kind of collectively hit bottom and said, okay, enough is enough. And like Alex had mentioned, that there's a dip in rent costs that allowed people to come back into the city, which was actually nice. I had people that were living in different parts of the area and finally had an opportunity to get in. So that's really nice, because these are people, like Jennifer said, that want to be here. Not that the people didn't want to be here before. Like, change is inevitable. And without change, the city would die. So I welcome change. I like it. I thrive on change. It makes me grow personally. So I think that's inevitable. The change we see today is change that, probably 20 years ago was a .com, and they said the same thing. But I think each group and generation that comes through here says, oh, this change has changed. But it's, you know what, it's changed for the next generation to take on and help continue to push the city forward. Some of the challenge that we have is, and I think we are actually in a good position in San Francisco in the way that we're looking at this, and this is the policing of the city. And I don't know how many people recently had heard about the MS-13 raid, where the FBI and city had worked to arrest 13 gang members involved in multiple homicides over the last year, I think year and a half. Yeah, that's a problem. It's a problem. You know, it's a problem all over the city. I think it's something that residents recognize. I think that when the city responds to the concerns of policing on all levels, I think that we're in a better space. I think we're still trying to figure that out, what that looks like. Yeah, I think the idea of reallocating funds like we did with the crisis intervention group was a great example of how to build a better community civilian group to deal with everything we deal with. I think has demonstrated that we're at least looking at doing policing differently. And we've done at least a step forward to make even one little thing a little different. And that was, you know, in that situation. So I think that's probably our biggest challenge. Because if people don't feel safe, they're not going to go out, and they're not going to go to the restaurants, they're not going to go out, and they're not going to socialize, they're not going to be involved. And then we just run into this challenge of isolation as well. So, but that's, I think that we're heading in the right direction in that.
Great, thank you. Alex, signs of hope from your perspective and challenges for the future?
Absolutely. I echo a lot of what my co-panelists said. I think for me, a really exciting sign of hope recently was Castro back, or I'm sorry, Halloween back in the Castro. That was my very first time going out in the Castro when I was 17 was the last year that they shut everything down, and because there were a bunch of shootings in the neighborhood, and then Pink Saturday kind of tumbled after that. But this year, the Castro had a very uneventful Halloween, which is a good thing. There wasn't anything notable of any kind that happened. It was just a bunch of people going out and having fun. We had tons of kids trick-or-treating. That was a huge sign of hope for me. Just kind of as a milestone, I guess. But as past that, I think there's so much to be hopeful about. I mean, there's a bunch of new restaurants opening up in the neighborhood. There's a bunch of, you know, new businesses opening up, and people are, you know, out and about. It's so fun. And I, you know, when I go over to Hayes Valley also, or Dubois Triangle, which I do often, you know, the neighborhoods are really thriving. The nightlife pieces and the food scenes really seem to be thriving all across the city, and it's really exciting to see. And also the performing arts coming back as well, as Jennifer said, I think is really great. I've certainly been enjoying that a lot myself. I definitely think one challenge that the Castro has that I mean, we have a higher level of retail vacancies than Hayes Valley or Dubois Triangle do. A lot of that is due to the fact that most of Castro Street is owned by 3 or 4 people, and they keep prices artificially high, and therefore new businesses can't move into the neighborhood as readily. And that's just an unfortunate reality that we as neighborhood leaders have been trying very hard to address for years and are continuing to actively work on. But there's only so much that can be done past a certain point. I think, as others have said, I think all of our communities are really well positioned to deal with all of these issues because of the increase in engagement I think more people are engaged in something, and it doesn't really matter what people are engaged in. It's a matter that you're engaged with something that, you know, that works toward the better good, the greater good. And it's again been a great sign of hope that I get so many calls and emails from neighbors who I've never spoken with before, saying, hey, I want to, you know, work on this issue or about this. Let's, you know, can we do this mural? Can we do this project? Can we do all of these things? And, you know, I think after 2 years of sheltering in place, people are like kind of in a better and more accepting place as far as, you know, their role in the world and what they can contribute. And people want to make a difference. People want to see things around them change for the better. You know, for our unhoused neighbors, for our housed neighbors, and everybody else. You know, for tourists visiting the neighborhoods, we rely heavily on tourism in San Francisco, and that's something that has not really recovered yet, is our tourism industry. And there's so many good things going on, and I think they far outnumber the bad things. And as Frank was saying, there is just, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, lost it.
All right, all right,
I'll come back to it if I think of it.
all right. Well, thank you. So I'm going to move on to our sort of third grouping of questions. I just want to remind those listening that as soon as we're done with this next round, we'll start to get other questions. So think about what you might want to ask. Go ahead and put that in the chat, and Mike will facilitate that. So Frank, we'll start with you this round. So what are groups doing well in addressing community needs? What role do you see for the faith community in addressing any of the important issues that we've been discussing?
Well, let's start with the faith groups. Faith groups have been very successful in San Francisco historically, and continue, especially during the crisis that we're experiencing right now, both economic crisis and the COVID crisis. So, you know, my hat comes off to thank the faith communities for being there, for providing support, shelter, social and emotional support, as well as food, and just some basic comfort to those especially in need during this time. And this has been no different. I mean, it's been phenomenal. Keep doing that work. Keep coordinating and organizing with other organizations that you do the work through. I think that's really important, because though you may have your own activities going on, all of us rely on one another to kind of point people in the right direction where they can get various services. And collectively, I think people just don't know. You know, sometimes people think because someone's, for instance, on the street without a home, they know where to go and they know what to do. Or someone's been in the area for, you know, a year or 2 or 3, you may have seen them, they know where health services are, or where food is available, or where shelter is available. It's not the case. That's something that was amazing to me. And we have had a lot of people move into the area from outside the area. That's just, I mean, it's just the reality. And so remembering that when we engage people and we talk to them, we ask them if they need help, if they have any questions, that we are a great source for people. Our organizations are, your organization is, the faith groups is especially important. People, whether they don't know, whether they know where to go or not, they know they can find some answers and some comfort at a church. Whether they're faithful or not, they just know. It's just one of those things that people know that they can do. And I just urge people to continue to do that, and organizations to do that. We have a lot of good organizations in here. You know, Larkin Street Youth Services provides great services to homeless youth. Our neighborhood associations do a great job. engaging neighbors and keeping them socially connected so they don't feel isolated, so they feel a part of the community. And I think keeping that moving forward and keeping that engagement is really, really important. So let's see where we're at. Role of the community faith group. Keep doing what you're doing. The only thing that I think we need to do, and Alex mentioned this a little bit, is communication. We just need to communicate a little bit better amongst each other. You're our neighbor. I mean, you're right. You are in our neighborhood. There's just so much that we do one another that we just don't know necessarily. And having forums like this is helpful. But also having avenues where we can reach out to one another and just share what's going on. And it doesn't have to be anything major. It can just be something really small. I mean, we had our block parties collectively. I think we had 33 block parties throughout the city just recently. And connecting those was really helpful. And connecting all the organizations in the area with that was helpful. Businesses as well, because they benefited from this increase in foot traffic. So just working together and keeping everyone informed of what we're doing and supporting one another's efforts and getting things done.
Right. Alex, we'll move to you next. So what are groups doing well in addressing community needs? What's the role for the faith community in addressing the important issues?
Sure. I think San Francisco is unique amongst American cities for its commitment to supporting so many different nonprofit organizations. And I think, I think nonprofits overall have kind of been at the forefront of not only COVID response and community engagement, but making sure that no one gets left behind. And it kind of fits very well into how I think the faith community is involved. I know, many, I am Jewish and always and grew up Jewish, and Judaism has a very strong, social justice bent to it. And I know many other faith groups have similar social justice bents. And I think what's most important is that faith groups, especially, but many other sorts of nonprofit organizations as well, serve communities and have memberships that are different from each other, and in doing so can reach the greatest number of people. Whether it's an older person who is stuck at home and doesn't have doesn't have a lot of communication with the outside world, or a lot of friends in the neighborhood, or whether it's a youth who's been, who's not comfortable living at home for whatever reason. We have Lyric in the Castro, which is one of my favorite personal nonprofits, but there's so many. It's hard to say all of them. And just making sure that each of our groups and all of the other groups, and this is already happening, this isn't really a suggestion as to what we can change, but just keep going to all of your community members and engaging with ones who haven't been active for a while, because the pandemic's affected a lot of things for a lot of people, not only economically, but mental health wise and, physically in a lot of senses. People who have, had COVID-19 have long-term physical effects from it and may not be able to, go shopping the way they used to, or may not be able to do that. And, churches, for those who attend churches or church-related functions, it's a very powerful thing. And I got to work with a lot of faith-based groups in the Bayview and Fillmore neighborhoods. And, they reach people that city government doesn't. They reach people that other nonprofit organizations don't. And all of that is it's really important to keep that in mind. I think, this is a plug for my most important issue. I think the one group that isn't doing a great job is city government overall. I think there are subparts of city government that are doing a great job. And I think because in my view, the number one political issue in this city is corruption. that, you know, I think our city government, despite being huge and having a huge tax base, is not responding in many ways as well as it could. And I think it's our job as San Francisco voters to make sure that those problems get addressed, and that our city government's working for us and not against us or for certain people only. I think, you know, that's definitely something faith and neighborhood groups alike can contribute, is, you know, pressuring our city to do the right thing, and serve the people who need services the most, you know, the people we all see on the streets every single day, and, you know, and small businesses who are struggling with broken windows or other or robberies or other things like that too. Both are important. You know, people who need help on their rent, who are behind on rent. There's resources out there. Do people know about it? Maybe. It's important that everybody does though, because, you know, there's a potential eviction tsunami coming, as they say. So there's each different organization plays a really important role, and especially on the very local level, on this neighborhood level, as churches and neighborhood groups alike are, really do have a very important role in outreach and making sure that everybody's receiving some level of services if they need them.
Mm-hmm. Great. So Jennifer, how about your thoughts on what groups are doing well to address community needs and the role for the faith community in addressing these issues?
Yeah, we have a few organizations that we've worked with quite a bit in Hayes Valley and bordering the Western Addition. Collective Impact up at Ella Hill Hutch Center. They've been doing just a remarkable job with keeping kids engaged and helping them with distance learning, because a lot of these kids didn't have computers. They didn't have the resources to be able to do distance learning. The Success Center in that same area is also good with getting people ready for job placements. And so I think that's been an essential part. Bethel AME Church has a food bank that we've been sending volunteers to in Hayes Valley every week. They had a huge need for more volunteers when the pandemic hit, because they had to change the way that they were doing their operations. And of course, the numbers of people needing services increased. You know, I think all of those areas have been doing really well. Within the city government, there's actually one department that I think has done a really good job, and that is the Recreation and Park Department. You know, they have just been superheroes during all of this, keeping our parks a place that we can all go to and seek refuge in. And so I've just been super impressed with them. And I work with my local park manager on some different things there. And I never forget to tell them how wonderful I think that their team has done. There's a new organization that's popped up too in the last year and a half called Rescue SF, that we've started to work with them as well. And I think that they are doing a really good job of engaging communities and pulling them together across the city to talk about the issues of homelessness. And the most visible part of homelessness really is what we're seeing on the streets, and trying to be a voice that compels the city to do the right things, to find housing that, you know, we can't get everyone into permanent housing right now, but we need an interim solution. So kind of pushing the city to get to that interim solution and be voices. And I think that is an area where faith-based organizations can also get involved in compelling the city to try to do the right things by adding your names to some of these organizations that are pushing those issues. I think, you know, like Bethel AME Church is doing the food bank. If there's an opportunity to open up your space for an operation like that to help the community, anything like that would be really helpful. being able to have a bunch of resources available that you can guide people to should they need them. You know, knowing kind of the hot teams, knowing any of those outreach that you can try to connect people in it. And then finally, I think that, you know, if any of the churches wanted to do some beautification projects to show the community that, you know, you're not just physically there as a structure, but you care about the surrounding community too. I know when HVNA goes out and does the cleanups, we always have people coming up and saying, thank you so much. Who are you? You know, where are you from? How can we get involved? And I think the more we can get more groups out here showing that we care about the city, it goes beyond just picking up trash. It really gets people engaged in, oh yeah, we can make a difference. So it's a small thing that goes a long way. I think that's it for my thoughts on it.
Well, those are interesting, great thoughts. So in our last 10 or 11 minutes, Mike, do you want to ask some of the questions that are showing up in the chat? You're muted, Mike.
Sorry, there I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will now sort of go through the list of questions that were asked in the chat. How well has the city promoted the recovery of local businesses?
I can jump in with what they've done in Hayes Valley. Just the shared streets program that they worked with us on getting implemented went a long way to the recovery economically of Hayes Valley. But beyond that, I don't really think that there's been a whole lot. Hopefully Alex and Frank can speak to any other examples, but that's kind of my only example.
I see head shaking.
Yeah, let me jump in real quick. Sorry, Alex. Not a whole lot. We didn't get the shared streets. They tried it for a second in Castro. They didn't do it here. And I think one of the problems that we have, even though we don't have as many vacancies as Alex, is simply because we just don't have the volume. Percentage wise, we have way too many. And this idea of maybe there's not much going on. You know, there's no vacancy tax initiative. There's nothing to incentivize businesses from opening up. And it's unfortunate because this is an opportunity for new business owners to do something. You know, even old businesses to readjust their business strategy and their business models. They've learned something through this. And I'm sure there's a lot of them who would love to jump right back in to the type of work, but on a completely different model that would work in any event, in any environment that they might face going forward. So yeah, I would like to see the city step up and provide some support. What that might look like, you know, there's a number of ideas out there, but there hasn't been much going on in my neighborhood.
Similar answer to the other two speakers. Shared spaces definitely was a big lifeline. I know there was a fairly small fund that Supervisor Mandelman did for broken window replacement specifically for businesses who have their windows broken. And past that, it has been pretty hands-off. And there's, you know, there's a million ideas out there. We're a city of 1 million people. There's, you know, there's no shortage of intelligent, you know, thoughtful people in the city. And it's kind of been left up to the neighborhoods to fend to themselves, which is kind of sad and also what we're left with. So
yeah, if I could pop in, I think the biggest thing that the government could do here is to get out of the way of business owners so that they can actually open a business. I mean, you know, the red tape is unbelievable, and it makes it to where only the very well funded can actually open here. It's absolutely driving out small businesses.
That's too bad. During the questions, there was one point that was raised about communication, and we have a question here. How can we better communicate with each other?
I can jump in on that one. I for me, communication is all about just getting as much information as possible and sharing between all of the groups. So like after this, I sincerely hope I get the newsletter from St. Francis Church, which I didn't get before, so I can share those things with our membership and vice versa, and you know, and all of the different parts of the network. It's just about sharing everything that's going on and sharing that information with as many people as possible. And kind of what I was talking about earlier with, you know, each different organization playing a different role and reaching different people. The way we reach everyone, or as close to everyone as possible, is just, you know, leaders sharing information and you know, signing up for as many mailing lists as you can, and actually reading those the things that are sent out. That's the trap that everyone, including me, falls into, where I, you know, have a billion mailing lists and I maybe skim some of them and I don't necessarily read all of them, and as a result, sometimes my membership misses out on things. And, you know, I think that issue goes deep for many, many people and organizations alike. But, you know, altogether, we are very powerful. Like the community is very powerful and has a lot of people and a lot of groups who want to make it work. And it's just a matter of getting that information to each other.
Any other comments?
We have a newsletter that we actually still send out. We actually deliver. We're going to go electronic at some point, but our newsletter is one of those things that people love to get. Even if they're not in their neighborhood, they love to get it. And for us, one of the things that we're looking to do is actually have more people submitting articles from outside the organization. So for us, I think it'd be great to engage other organizations to write articles and provide some input on whatever topic, you know, that might, you know, be, you know, pertinent to something that you're doing, you're interested in, a topic in the area, community, in the city, state, nationwide, environment, anything. But we're looking to really utilize that vehicle to communicate and to expand our reach, not only with our neighbors, but with other organizations and neighborhoods as well.
Great. Next question. How does the community perceive St. Francis in particular?
I'm not sure I can speak for the whole community on this because I really just don't know. But my personally only exposure to St. Francis has been through the recovery community, and I know that St. Francis hosts many, many, many different types of recovery groups often. And I know that's, you know, a sizable use of your spaces. Apart from that, I don't really know a whole lot about what community effort St. Francis does. So I would love to learn more about that and, you know, see past recovery and 12-step meetings, what other sorts of events the church might be willing to host.
Here in DuBose Triangle, since we're right here, I think a lot of neighbors are very aware of the work that is done at St. Francis. I think that we haven't mutually been engaged in too much collectively, which I think we have great opportunities to do that and support one another. And I know that it would be welcomed, I think, all around. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the general perception is from Hayes Valley, because we are maybe a little bit further away. I've personally been there to watch a choir performance, and you know it's a beautiful church. But you know, I think including any events going on in a newsletter that you can send to the Hayes Valley Neighborhood Association, we can forward some of those on here and there. And you can also tweet at us. If anyone's doing Twitter there, we, you know, quite often will retweet that so that the community knows what's happening.
Sounds great. Comment from one of the listeners. Thrilled to hear that Parks and Rec has played a big role in the city's health and well-being. Next question. A member of St. Francis wrote in with this question. What can St. Francis do to encourage people to attend service and join the congregation?
I'm just going to throw out my idea again of going and doing some beautification projects so that people know that you're out there. You know, you can get some of the safety vests and get the name of the church on it, so that people know that you care about the community.
Yeah, ditto. I think that being engaged with the community will make the community feel that you're a part of us, and hence we are a part of your group. But I don't know if that is necessarily going to equate to somebody wanting to join the congregation, but it will definitely make people more comfortable and aware of who you are. So if they do want and seek that type of connection, that you're much more accessible and available. And we have a lot of opportunities to do just that.
Excellent.
And yeah, the only thing I would add to that is having events open to the public will definitely be able to, you know, bring new people in who wouldn't necessarily otherwise be physically in the church for, you know, religious purposes or going to services, things like that.
Great.
Just on the, do you have event space? And I ask because that might be a great opportunity for other organizations to kind of engage with the space mutually. And I'm not sure if you do, but I know we're always looking for event space.
I'm not sure if we have several different programs that actually utilize our space right now. But what you're referring to is just some type of rented space that we would provide for organizations. Is that what you're thinking?
No, I'm actually thinking more on the grounds of like the neighborhood association. If we were to collectively do something and be able to be hosted at your church. So let's say we have a youth Christmas thing or a New Year kind of celebration thing. Not, you know, something like that. Spring, you know, something along that lines.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And then we could collaborate that, and then through, you know, your newsletter as well as through our congregation, you know, organize that. Yeah, interesting. Any other questions from the floor? Well, I'd like to thank Jennifer and Frank and Alex for participating in our community listening. And also like to thank Tom for chairing the questions. We will have a recording and we'll send that out as well. This is really helpful for us for our strategic planning and seeing how we're going to be participating with these communities in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you all. It was really great.
Thank you for having us.
So nice to meet you all.
Thanks for hosting us.
Really nice to meet you all.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the streets.
Yes.
Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
All right.